by Hurricane Ian. Over half of our counties in Florida were affected one way or another by this storm. And it also went on to affect areas in the Carolinas as well. So we thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I would like to also emphasize that the presentation here today and the content is focused on recovery projects and specifically government-related contracting activities. This is a multifaceted, very, very complex response to this event. This presentation is purely focused on how to support recovery through government contracting efforts through either federal, state, or local agencies. So again, thank you, and we'll go ahead and proceed forward. I'd also like to recognize briefly our participating agencies. There have been a lot of people who have contributed to this event to ensure that we get you as much and accurate information as possible, to include our partners here in Florida, the Florida SBDC, and specifically the Florida SBDC at the University of West Florida. Without their support here, this would not be possible. Also, our collaboration with the professionals at FEMA, our National Association of Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, and also from the state of Florida, the Florida Department of Management Services, Supplier Diversity. What I'd like to do now is pretty much get into the meat of the content here and the presentation. Each of these agencies, you'll be hearing from each of these agencies in turn as we progress through the next few hours. Okay, first up, I'd like to introduce Ms. Letitia Holloman, who will brief us on how to do business with FEMA, and she will be followed by Ms. Amy Connolly, who will provide a briefing on FEMA's small business program and category management.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I want to thank everyone for your participation today. We hope that everyone's families are safe and doing well. We definitely hope the information provided today is useful to you in your search for government procurement opportunities. All registered participants will receive copies of the presentation today that are presented here, or feel free to take notes. There will be a lot of information that will be given. I'd like to thank Don from the PTAC in Florida for his assistance in putting this webinar together quickly, and the other PTACs as well, and the small business communities for their participation too. I am Ms. Holloman, a member of the FEMA's Industry Liaison Program. Today I have on the line with me some additional FEMA members. We have our Deputy Chief Component Procurement Officer, Mr. Engel, who's going to say a few words in a few moments. But we also have our Branch Chief, Don Klapka, our Small Business Liaison, Ms. Connolly, who will be going over the small business and category management portion, as well as my coworker, Mrs. Eldridge. And they will be answering questions along the way. As I mentioned, Mr. Lester Engel is on the line, and he would like to say a few words before we begin. Lester?
Thank you, Ms. Holloman. Good morning, everyone. And Mr. Zvesky, I appreciate your invitation to the PTAC presentation that you put on today. And, as you know, and the rest of the teams, we've been collaborating for a while, and it's well appreciated. And we're glad that we're able to come together at a time like this. We don't like coming together at times like this because that means that something has happened that has affected the community within Florida. But ultimately, the bigger thing is having the ability to do so and bringing folks together who have the capability of assisting the state to recover. So, thanks for the invitation, and we appreciate that. So on behalf of the FEMA Administrator, Deanne Criswell, and Bobby McCain, the Chief Procurement Officer for the organization, my name is Lester Engel. I'm the Deputy Chief Procurement Officer for FEMA. And as Ms. Holloman said, the team will get deep into detail relative to how to do business with FEMA. One thing we'll like to do is to get as many individuals, small businesses more than large if possible, active in the disaster recovery phase. We're pretty much beyond response. We're still in a urban search and rescue recovery style type phase now. And that's not a good phase to be in, because that means that, we're losing more and more people, but praying that everything goes well and we can find more individuals alive so we can continue to rebuild and help folks get their lives back together. So I've been at FEMA since 2008. So I've been involved in multiple arenas within the organization, from response recovery, the logistics side, the mitigation side, on the resilience side of the house. And one of the bigger things I've always noticed, being in procurement for over 20 some years, is small businesses always want to participate, but there are different avenues that they need to take to get there. And so one thing that the team has decided to do is to work with the PTACs so that we can try and better assist small businesses at doing so, and, doing business with government. So you'll hear more from the team today. But, in the recovery phases, we do a lot of things such as procuring water, meals. We do debris removal, construction, and different things like that, haul and install of manufactured housing units, or whatever style of housing assistance that we provide for the state. And those are all opportunities that are available for small businesses as well. And one thing that we encourage you all to do, we also have what is known as pre-position contracts or advanced contracts. And these contracts give us the ability to be preemptive in the process of responding to actual disasters, and not have to go out and try and do new competitions while disaster is taking place. So it put us in a position to be, able to provide citizens support immediately. And what we would encourage you to do is take a look at that actual list itself and look at some of those businesses on there and try and reach out to them and create some type of partnering or teaming arrangement so that you guys can gain the actual knowledge associated with performing those services. Not saying that you don't have it, but you can see it at a different level, from a large business, how they function and make things happen. And then you can eventually take over those services and or whatever it is, provide supplies, because in accordance with FAR Part 26, we're required to go local, and the local area is described in the Federal Acquisition Regulation. So, highly encourage you to reach out to those individual large businesses and figure out, how can you step in and assist in the process. But other than that, I don't want to speak too much. I want to get to the meat of everything. And again, Mr. Zaveski, I appreciate you and your team putting this together and allowing us to participate and giving us the opportunity to come on board and try and deliver some type of capability or a tool to give small businesses an opportunity to reach FEMA and the state government. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lester. I appreciate that. Okay, I will say, if you have any questions, again, we ask that you place them in the chat. We have a wealth of knowledge on the webinar today to answer your questions, so please ask away. All right, this is about the Industry Liaison Program. This slide tells you about our program and what we do. We establish relationships with suppliers and stakeholders. The Industry Liaison Program serves as an information provider for vendors who want to do business with FEMA. So if you are looking to do business, we are where you come. So we are your one-stop shop for information. We work with vendors to make sure they understand our process. We also connect vendors with program offices within FEMA to support our mission. Next slide, please. Okay, the Local Business Transition Team, LBTT. The LBTT is the Local Business Transition Team, and it is a mobile component of the Industry Liaison Program. When there's a disaster declared, LBTT is activated. It functions from within FEMA's Joint Field Office. We can perform outreach when deployed to disaster areas. We also can assist the contracting officers with extra market research to find companies within the devastated areas. LBTT is an extension of the Industry Liaison Program. So if there's a disaster in your area, more than likely the LBTT will be deployed to perform outreach. They also provide updates to us back at headquarters to keep us up to date. Next slide. Now we're going to go into how to do business with FEMA in 4 steps. Next slide. Okay. The Association for Procurement Technical Assistance Center, the PTAC. They are an excellent resource if you have not done business with the government or FEMA before. The PTAC provides great tools and tips for companies that are looking to do business with FEMA for the first time. They offer a number of services free of charge for a nominal fee. They will help you find and prepare proposals or bids on government contract opportunities. The PTAC offers information to their clients, helping companies maneuver through the SAM.gov process. They are funded through a cooperative agreement between the Department of Defense and state and local nonprofit entities. The PTAC is a network of dedicated procurement professionals. The PTAC counselors are experienced in government contracting and provide a wide range of services, including information necessary to successfully compete for government contracts. FEMA's Industry Liaison Program, we are very appreciative of the collaborations between the PTACs across the country. And you can find your local PTAC on the website that's listed here. And the PTACs are located by states, and the PTAC can be found in most universities across the country. Next slide, please. Okay, the System for Awards Management, SAM registration. SAM.gov is the System for Awards Management. It is the official website used to register your company or your businesses. You need to be registered in SAM.gov to do business with the government. There's no cost to register. When you set up registration, you will need a unique entity ID, and SAM will issue that number to you. The unique entity ID is a 12-character alphanumeric ID assigned to the entities by SAM.gov. The UEI is allowing SAM to cut down the third-party process. It also allows them to streamline their process. If you are registered in SAM.gov, a UEI has already been assigned to you, and it is viewable in SAM.gov now. That includes companies that are inactive. The UEI is currently located below the DUNS number on your entity registration record in SAM.gov. You will also need a tax identification number, which can be obtained through the IRS.gov website. And please be aware that there are companies that replicate the services of the federal government and may charge you a crazy amount for a service that is offered, and they'll promise you a contract, which is definitely not true. Nor can they guarantee you, guarantee you a contract or a meeting. All must go through the same process. I've found that some companies do this, but why pay for a service that you can do yourself for free with help from your local PTAC? When you register in IRS.gov, please make sure that you take note of how you register your company, so that when you go to SAM.gov, your company, the way you register your company is the same way. For example, if you register your company in the IRS.gov as ABC Trucking LLC, then you go to SAM and try to register your company as ABC Trucking without the LLC. It would delay your process because it's not the way you have it originally registered in IRS.gov. It seems like something small, but it will cost you time and money. SAM will kick back your application and it will slow your process down. Try to remain patient because there are a lot of companies registering at the same time. And SAM also offers a live chat to assist vendors trying to do business as well. So that is another option that you might want to be interested in. Next slide, please. Okay, disaster response registry. I'm not going to read this whole slide, but because of course you're going to get copies of it. But when a disaster occurs, there may be services needed to be procured and rushed into the affected areas. So the System for Awards Management, SAM, contains a disaster registry in accordance with FAR Sub Part 411 and FAR Sub Part 26.2. It allows companies to list and give their willingness to provide emergency relief, supplies, and/or services. And you want to know, how do you add your company to the disaster response registry? When you're going through the SAM.gov, the SAM registration process, there's an option that will ask if you want your company to be registered in the disaster response registry. If you feel like this is something that you're interested in for your company, please make sure that you check the box. And checking the box, know that until your registration is reflecting active in SAM.gov, your company's information will not be available to the contractors. Once it's showing active, contract officers will be able to view your company in the registry search. If you are a company that has been registered for some time and you don't know if you are in the registry, you can reach out to the Federal Service Desk, which manages the SAM registration process. Their number is 1-866-606-8220. You can write it down, but of course you'll have the slides with the number. It'll be referenced again in the presentation. And also their website is www.fsd.gov. And doing this now will position you to take advantage of opportunities that are still days, weeks, or months down the road. So you definitely want to take care of that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, understanding FEMA's mission and goals. Okay, to gain an understanding of FEMA's missions, please go to FEMA.gov. FEMA.gov has a lot of relevant information and useful information on the site. Okay, FEMA operates in accordance with the Robert T. Stafford Act. The goal is to seek local vendors within the disaster area for goods and services related to specific disasters when practical and feasible. So that means when we're looking within the state of the local disaster area, when it's practical and feasible, we will look for those vendors. FEMA will transition advanced contracts to local vendors when feasible and practical per the Stafford Act, Section 307. You are encouraged to monitor state and local government websites, as some requirements might transition to become local procurements. Also, local businesses should be monitoring state requirement notices for contracting opportunities as well. Okay. The key is to remember when it is not practical because of the businesses in the immediate area might not be able to respond right away because of the magnitude of the disaster. So in that instance, it will not be practical or feasible. So below you will see the sections of the FAR that are used to determine local vendors. You'll see the Stafford Act, Section 307, and the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the FAR, sections that are used for local vendors. Okay, next slide, please. The ESFs. Okay, the ESFs provide structural, they are the emergency support functions, The emergency support functions, ESF, provide structure and for coordinating federal interagency support. In essence, the purpose of having emergency support functions is because during a disaster, FEMA can't possibly do everything themselves. We utilize the help of other federal entities to help meet our mission during the disaster. ESFs may be selectively activated for both Stafford Act and non-Stafford Act incidents. There are 15 ESFs, and I will show them on the next slide. But also, there's also the State Emergency Management Agency. Each state coordinates the activation and use of resources needed to support local government to respond and recover from emergencies and disasters. And then we have the Urban Search and Rescue. And FEMA coordinates 28 disaster response task force throughout the United States with the capability to deploy across the country. And you can get more information on the Urban Search and Rescue under FEMA.gov under Urban Search and Rescue. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here you will find the 15 emergency support functions. You may also find them on FEMA's website, of course, FEMA.gov. If you look, you'll see the ESF number and the ESF name and the ESF coordinator, and they are the lead. And like for debris removal, of course, we use the Corps of Engineers. So they are our lead for ESF number 3. Okay, and that's for Public Works. And of course, FEMA has ours for the housing and search and rescue for DHS and FEMA. We are the leads. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, monitoring contracting opportunity sites. Okay, the first one is it's going to be sam.gov, formerly fbo.gov, and formerly beta.sam.gov. It is the official website used by the federal government. It posts procuring opportunities over 25,000. You can find what FEMA is procuring or the government as a whole. This is a free web-based portal which will provide federal procurement opportunities. If you should have any questions reference to anything listed on sam.gov, you can contact the Federal Service Desk, and their number is listed there again. And also, as I mentioned before, their website is www.fsd.gov. And also here, I'll say that we have been getting many phone calls from individuals that are looking for job opportunities, and they are not part of a company or a business. And you need to go to FEMA Careers for that. And that website is www.fema.gov/careers. Okay, oops, sorry. And then also we have, when you're looking for, we have Unisom Marketplace as well. Also, when you're looking for opportunities, don't just look for FEMA. Maybe list your commodity, and then they'll show you who is procuring that item. And we also have the Unisom Marketplace, formerly FedBid, which is another web-based portal which connects sellers to federal and commercial opportunities. You can direct questions reference to Unisom Marketplace to the number listed here as well. And then we have the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, Acquisition Plan and Forecast System. Okay, the Acquisition Plan and Forecast System, it forecasts opportunities at DHS. APFS shows all Department of Homeland Security contracting opportunities to include FEMA. The small business specialist will talk about this more and the benefits of using it. Bottom line is you need to actively search and find contracting opportunities and pursue them. They will not come to you. The next slide, please. This is where we're going to the procurements that are procured during disasters. Next slide. Okay. This slide lists some but not all of our top commodities that we procure during disasters: tarps, blankets, generators, all types of needs. It varies, so you need to keep a lookout on sam.gov. You may also look on FEMA.gov under advanced contracting for goods and services, where it shows our preposition contracts. We have them so that we are ready in case of an emergency. The preposition contracts are used at the onset of a disaster until we are able to transition to local or small businesses. You can find information on declarations as well on the FEMA.gov website. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to talk about the debris removal. Debris removal, you have to register with the Corps of Engineers to do debris removal. You saw on the ESF that FEMA partners with the United States Corps of Engineers. If you go to the site for the Corps of Engineers, it will take you to the United States Corps of Engineers contracting registry. You will need to register with them first of all, but they will ultimately send you back to sam.gov because, as I stated before, it is the official website for government contracts. So United States Corps of Engineers manages FEMA's debris removal. Okay, next we have FEMA's transportation services. FEMA now manages its own transportation program. The program usually holds an event in November, but you will need to monitor sam.gov for information on their industry days. If you're looking to offer transportation services, go to the website listed here. There's a website where you can find out more information about the program. And we also have the email address for the transportation program as well, where you can contact them directly. And that's the email address for it. And then last but not least, we have the transitional shelter and assistance. If you represent a hotel or motel wanting to participate in FEMA's transitional shelter assistance program, which offers rooms to disaster survivors seeking housing aid, you may visit the site listed to gain detailed information about the program. And the next slide, please. Okay, this is going to give you a few helpful tips to always promote your company on government databases, such as sam.gov, of course. And monitor open opportunities on sam.gov. And you can also you can voluntarily submit a vendor profile form. It is not mandatory. Just let us know you're out there. Submit this through the FEMA.gov website. The PDF form is no longer being accepted, but if you go to the FEMA.gov under work with us and then doing business with FEMA, look for the vendor profile form. Completing the form does not guarantee you a contract or an award. It does not guarantee you a meeting with the FEMA representative. It is strictly for market research. It does not put you on a preferred list. And when completing the form, make sure to indicate your reason for contacting FEMA. Okay, next slide, please. All right. Well, we thank you so much for being here today. And hope you learned a little bit about how to do business with FEMA. And we hope you found this information useful. If you have any additional questions, we have our email address here. Feel free to email us and list any questions in the chat. And I'll pass it on to Ms. Amy Connolly, our Small Business Liaison. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Connolly. I'm going to be talking about FEMA Small Business Program. Thank you, Ms. Holloman, for the great presentation on the Industry Liaison Program. So the FEMA Small Business Program and the Industry Liaison Program work together. We're part of FEMA's Business Relations branch under the Chief Procurement Officer's office. Next slide, please. So DHS's OSDBU office, that stands for Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, works with FEMA and other component agencies. And here's a list of the other component agencies that fall under the Department of Homeland Security. It includes U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, the U.S. Coast Guard, ICE, and so forth. So OSDBU works with FEMA and these other component agencies, including the ones shown here, to promote and develop strategies for small business participation in DHS's contracting programs. And they do this while adhering to federal business regulations and ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusion in the procurement process. Next slide, please. So what is a small business? I see that a lot of you are already familiar with these different small business categories. I see from the chat, many of you already have some of these certifications, but let's just go through briefly and talk about the small business categories that are important for procurement purposes. So this table lists the primary ones. So the first is overall small business. An overall small business is really any small business to include all socioeconomic categories that is certified by the Small Business Administration as a small business. And that's usually based by NAICS code, so that's North American Industry Classification System. And it depends usually either on the size of the business represented by the number of employees or the average annual receipts over a 5-year period. Overall small disadvantage, prime, that's a category that represents small disadvantaged businesses. These are businesses that are owned and operated by persons who belong to a group that historically has been socially and economically disadvantaged. This includes the 8A program. The 8A program is inclusive of small disadvantaged businesses that are certified under the Small Business Administration's 8A development program. And the name 8A comes from the section title under the Small Business Act. Hub zone is the next category. Hub zone are small businesses that operate and employ people in historically underutilized business zones. Service disabled veteran-owned small business, that's the next category. These are small businesses that are at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more service disabled veterans. And then finally, women-owned small business. These are women-owned small businesses. They're at least 51% owned and controlled by women who are U.S. citizens. And these, of course, for the women-owned small business category, that's really NAICS dependent. So those industry and NAICS codes that are underrepresented may have set-asides for businesses that meet, that are certified under the Women-Owned Small Business Program. On the next slide, I'm gonna have a link to the Small Business Administration. But for all of these different program categories, you can find more information and information about how to become certified if you meet those requirements on the SBS website. I do also want to point out that the bottom 4 categories, 8A Prime, Hub Zone, Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business, and Women-Owned Small Business are considered socioeconomic categories. And we're going to talk about some opportunities for socioeconomic categories of small businesses in the next couple slides. So I just want to point that out. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so in this presentation, I am going to talk about federal requirements that pertain to small businesses. I'm going to talk about Executive Order 13985 and OMB Memorandum 2203, which also provides some opportunities for small businesses. I'm going to talk about some agency goals that pertain to small businesses. And finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about category management. Next slide, please. Okay, so federal requirements pertaining to small businesses, and this is good for you to know because it may give you hope because there are quite a few opportunities for small business participation in federal contracts. First of all, you should know that if an acquisition is at or below the simplified acquisition threshold of $250,000 and above the micro purchase threshold of $10,000, an acquisition is mandated exclusively for small business. And this is mandated through the Federal Acquisition Regulation, and you can find that in, that's the FAR Part 19. So this is, of course, if there is a small business that can perform the work. And contracting officers should first consider an acquisition for the small business socioeconomic categories that are the bottom 4 on the table on the last slide before considering an overall small business set aside. The second requirement pertaining to small business is if an acquisition is at or above the simplified acquisition threshold, above the simplified acquisition threshold. An acquisition must be set aside for small businesses where there is a reasonable expectation of receiving fair market prices from at least 2 small business concerns. This is called the rule of 2, and this applies to open market acquisitions as well as to multiple award contracts, such as departmental and FEMA enterprise-wide contracts. So a lot of opportunity here for small business participations. Really, our contracting officers are really looking for small businesses that can do the work before releasing a contract to larger businesses if there are no small businesses that can participate. Next slide, please. On this slide, I'm going to talk about small business set-aside. Really, there's 3 types of small business set-asides that are available for small businesses. The first is a total small business set-aside, and that information about that can be found in FAR Part 19, Subpart 502-2. That is where a requirement by the government is entirely set aside for small businesses. And it can be set aside for small business in general, or it can be set aside for a small business socioeconomic category, such as 8A or women-owned small business. A partial small business set aside is where part of a requirement or in multiple award contracts, it may be one award of the multiple awards, one aside for small businesses. That's something that can often be found in our advanced contracts. And then finally, sole source set-asides. Sole source set-asides are where a requirement is sole source to a specific vendor that falls under one of the 4 socioeconomic categories where sole sourcing is allowed. And the information about sole sourcing can be found in FAR Part 19, Subpart 502-2. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are sole source thresholds? So the federal government can give sole source contracts to vendors that are certified in the following areas up to a certain threshold limit. So those limits are listed here on the right. They're usually between 7 and 7.5 million for manufacturing requirements and 4 and 4.5 million for other requirements. Those other requirements usually mean services. So that's good to know, because if you meet one of those certification requirements, it is possible that there may be sole source opportunities for you. Next slide, please. All right, I want to talk a little bit about Executive Order 13985 and OMB, Office of Memorandum and Budget, Office of Management and Budget, Memorandum 22-03. So Executive Order 13985, which is also listed at the bottom of this slide in case you want to go into it and look at it further. I don't have the URL code, but you can Google the title, Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities Through the Federal Government. So this executive order was signed on January 25th of 2021, and it sets in place the Biden administration's directive advancing racial equality and support for underserved communities through the powers of the federal government. It includes, among other things, the directives listed here, which include directing agencies to conduct equity assessments, looking at potential barriers that underserved communities and individuals may face, and taking advantage of agency procurement and contracting opportunities, to consult with OMB, Office of Management and Budget, to address barriers to full and equal participation in agency procurement and contracting opportunities, to consult with members of underrepresented and underserved communities, and to evaluate opportunities to increase coordination, communication, and engagement with community-based organizations and civil rights organizations. So those are the directives under Executive Order 13985. But OMB, Office of Management and Budget, Memorandum 22-03, which is called Advancing Equity in Federal Procurement, really provides and sets out the concrete actions agencies must take to address equity using federal spend. So, for example, it requires agencies to coordinate with Small Business Administration to establish fiscal year goals that direct. In 2022, it was 11% of cumulative federal contract awards to small disadvantaged businesses. Now that we're in fiscal year 2023, that goal has gone up to 12%, and it is the goal is to reach 15% of federal spend to small disadvantaged businesses by the year 2025. So that's a lot of federal spend going to small businesses. 15% of all federal spend is somewhere in the range of $65 to $75 billion. So that makes a big difference. It also requires agencies to assess and adjust category management practices, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when we talk about category management, to increase opportunities for small disadvantaged businesses and other socioeconomic small businesses. It requires agencies to participate in efforts by OMB, the Small Business Administration, and the General Services Administration, and other federal organizations to amplify small business participation. And it requires agencies to include achievement goals in the key senior executive service officials' performance plans. So it really wants to make sure that there's some teeth behind this directive. And it requires agencies to ensure agency small business contracting offices have direct reporting lines to senior leadership. Next slide, please. So what are FEMA's small performance goals, and how did we do in fiscal year 2022? You can see on the left here, these are goals that are closely monitored by the Department of Homeland Security, by our Chief Component Procurement Officer, and by FEMA as a whole, because it's really important that we work to achieve these goals for small business participation. So in fiscal year 2022, our overall small business goal for eligible federal or FEMA spend was 24.5% of spend. For 8A prime, that was 4%, which went up from 2.5% in 2021. Non-8A, small disadvantaged business prime was 11%, up from 2.5%. Overall, small disadvantaged business prime is 15%. HUB zone is 3%. Service-disabled veteran-owned small business is 3%, and women-owned small business is 5% of eligible federal spend on the FEMA spend. So how did we do? In most cases in fiscal year 2022, we exceeded these goals, but we did not exceed the goals under 8A Prime and Hub Zone. So we're going to be working really hard to, in fiscal year 2023, to exceed all our goals where we can. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to talk about some best practices for you as potential vendors in participating in FEMA's acquisition. First of all, as I mentioned before, the Small Business Administration has a lot more information on program descriptions and certifications. And so I would encourage you to go to SBA's website, look at program descriptions, and you can also look at additional programs that they have. They have some really great programs for mentor-protege programs, joint venture programs, and really helpful information for those who are interested in doing business with the federal government. You can also find under the Small Business Administration's webpage their size standard tool. The link is provided here, and you all will receive a copy of this presentation. A size standard, which is usually stated in the number of employees or average annual receipts, represents the largest size that a business, including its subsidiaries and affiliates, may be to remain classified as a small business for SBA and federal contracting programs. So if you don't know whether or not you classify as a small business, you can go to this link. You can look up your NAICS code, or maybe you have multiple NAICS codes, and that stands again for North American Industry Classification, and see whether your business qualifies based on the number of employees, the average annual receipts over a 5-year period, and so forth. Next slide, please. Ms. Holloman talked about the PTAC centers, and you all are here because you have already reached out to your PTAC center, which is wonderful. You can see they provide an excellent resource. We're very pleased to be invited to participate in this webinar. So thank you, Florida PTAC and Dawn. And we hope you continue to use your PTAC as an excellent resource. They exist inside and outside of the continental United States. CONUS is continental United States, and OCONUS is outside of the continental United States. So that includes Puerto Rico, Guam, and even Saipan. Next slide, please. The acquisition planning forecast, we highly recommend that vendors check the acquisition planning forecast system if you're not doing that already. Ms. Holloman talked about that a little bit. But this is where at the earliest opportunity, FEMA is required to place potential requirements that may be coming down the pike. So this will be in advance of when the procurements are actually placed on SAM.gov or under Unison Marketplace. So if you go here, you'll be getting a little bit of a heads up on what requirements may be coming your way. And you can sort, you can set alerts in the acquisition planning forecast. You can sort by NAICS code. There will be information provided letting you know if it's going to be a small business set aside, if it's a set aside for one or more socioeconomic categories. There's some really good information in there. The purpose is to improve communication with industry and assist small business communities, with marketing efforts. So we really encourage you to go to the APFS and check and see what requirements may be coming down the line that you may want to bid on when the solicitation is released. Next slide, please. All right, and Ms. Holloman already talked about SAM.gov. We want to make sure that you all are checking for contract opportunities, especially during disaster times on SAM.gov. In some cases, like for the situation you all are in right now in Florida, contract opportunities may be posted and may have a really quick turnaround, maybe 24 hours, maybe even less. So we encourage you to check SAM.gov every day, if not every few hours, if you are able. SAM also has a contract data reporting tool. So this is the same system that used to be referred to as the Federal Procurement Data System, but it reports all buying by all agencies in the federal government. So you can really use this tool to look at who is buying what services and what products, and it can help you with your strategy and looking at where you should be applying your efforts for federal contract acquisitions. Next slide, please. SBA maintains a dynamic small business search, and this is something that our contracting officers often use, especially in the aftermath of disasters, to look for local small businesses or small businesses in general that can perform the work that they need. So we highly recommend that you make sure that you are registered as part of SBA's dynamic small business search. This is something that you can do while you are registering as a small business or obtaining certification as one of those socioeconomic categories. So please take this seriously. Make sure all your information is included so that you can be found in the dynamic small business search. Next slide, please. Okay, here I want to talk a little bit about category management. And the reason why this is important for you to know is because under DHS Directive 060-01, which was issued on August 24th, 2012, the DHS Undersecretary for Management made DHS's strategic sourcing contract vehicles mandatory for use with limited exceptions. What that means for you is that that FEMA and other DHS component agencies will be looking first at category management, strategic sourcing vehicles, and government-wide vehicles first before looking to solicit in an unrestricted requirement. So under category management, the federal government will buy as one by creating common categories of products and services across agencies and manage each category as a mini business with its own set of strategies. It's led by a category manager and supported senior team with expertise in their assigned category. Next slide, please. So here you can see the 10 common government spend categories, and they range everything from IT to professional service to travel and lodging, human capital. So you'll find that many, if not most, requirements can fall into these one of these 10 common government spend categories. Please. So I'm going to introduce you to two terms that relate to category management. One is called spend under management, and the other is called best in class. So spend under management is the percentage of an organization's spend, so in this case, FEMA spend, that is actively managed according to category management principles. So the Office of Management and Budget defines some as spend on contracts that meet defined criteria for management and data sharing maturity. So in essence, these are contracts that are part of category management, and they are managed by category managers. Best in class are government-wide acquisition vehicles that have satisfied key criteria defined by the Office of Management and Budget. Interagency category teams have worked to designate over 30 BICs to reduce the effort buyers spend in finding acquisition solutions. And BIC is a subset of some. So these are really kind of the top tier spend methods that FEMA is encouraged to use, and FEMA has goals related to the amount of spend that fit into these categories. So let's go to the next slide, please. So how does OMB evaluate agency spend to determine spend under management? So OMB uses a tiered rating scale and considers tier 3, which is BIC, to be of the greatest value, and tier 1 to be of the least value. So what does that mean? So tier 3 best-in-class vehicles are strategic sourcing vehicles that really offer the best pricing, terms, and conditions within the federal marketplace and reflect acquisition vehicles with the strongest management practices. So under these different categories, the 10 categories that I showed you in the table earlier, There are strategic sourcing vehicles, and you may be familiar with some of their names, maybe something like 8A Stars 3 or Oasis or CIO SP3. And these are vehicles that have vendors who are it may be a range of 30 to 150 or more vendors who have really been vetted for their management practices and who are part of this strategic source vehicle. And so FEMA contracting officers are encouraged to go to these vehicles first as kind of the top level strategy for spending in a really strategic way. Tier 2 multiple agency solutions, these reflect strong management practices, including data and information sharing across agencies with cross-agency metrics. An example of Tier 2, some would be the federal schedule, the federal supply schedule. Those would be considered Tier 2 solutions. Additionally, in the recent OMB Memorandum 22-03, they updated the category management regulations to say that we want to make sure that this doesn't leave out small businesses and especially small disadvantaged businesses. So we're going to update our category management principles, our category management regulations to say that any socioeconomic category requirement, so any acquisition that goes to a socioeconomic category of business is automatically going to get Tier 2 credit as far as agency goals. And I don't mean to get too into the weeds here because I know this gets kind of complicated, but I think it is important for you to understand where spending priorities are so that you can look at becoming part of the GSA schedule. You can be looking at part of possibly becoming a vendor under one of these best-in-class vehicles. It's important for you to know so that you can have the best opportunity to do business with FEMA and other federal agencies. Tier 1, these have mandatory use considerations. So these may be department or agency-wide vehicles. And then Tier 0 is not spend under management. This would be decentralized spend that is unaligned with category management practices. So these would be a requirement that is not conforming to category management principles. It's not part of a strategic contract. It doesn't have that oversight. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to talk about category management too much. It is quite complex, but you can go visit the category management portal, MAX, find out additional information about category management. And here you can also find information about the different vehicles that are offered, those vehicles that meet the best-in-class designation. And you can also find a list of vendors who are part of those acquisition vehicles. And that may be a good opportunity to you for looking at partnering with those vendors who are on those contracts, or looking at the contracts to find out when they will be opening it up to take on new vendors when their option period is up. Max registration is mandatory and can be performed on the sign-in page. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go ahead and end this presentation here, but I will be available to help answer questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Connolly. Thank you, Ms. Holloman. Fantastic presentations. A lot of content, a lot of information. I know if you've never done this before, or this is your first time looking at government contracts, it's a fire hose of information, and it is complex. Now, we're going to take a short break for about 10 minutes here, and we'll have a presentation from Robert Major with the Department of Management Services, Office of Supplier Diversity, and we'll also have a brief overview of the PTAC program and some lessons learned in hurricane recovery projects. So hang in there. There's a lot more to come. And again, we appreciate you attending. We'll see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you. We're lucky today to have a representative from the state of Florida, Mr. Robert Major. He's the executive director for the Office of Supplier Diversity with the Department of Management Services. You're hearing from a lot of people from a lot of different agencies today, and that is because a response like this takes many, many resources from federal, state, and local government agencies. So we're very lucky that Mr. Major took time out of his day today to present and share information with the Office of Supplier Diversity, but very, very critical and important to our recovery operations and disaster response here. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Major. Are you ready?
Don, thank you so much. It's an honor definitely to be here. And it's a lot of a wealth of information. I think this is so critical in these times. And my heart and my thought goes out to all the families that were affected by this storm. We have resiliency. The state of Florida has resilience. We will pivot and we will push through. And I know together we can, and I know together we will. So with that said, let's talk about government contracting. Let's talk about certification. Department of Management Services is a state agency where we manage everything from real estate, private prisons. We do large contracts. We do everything for the large procurement throughout the state of Florida. And housed in the Department of Management Services is the Office of Supplier Diversity, what we affectionately call OSD. OSD, we are a team, a small but mighty team. And what we do, we help and we assist and we provide first tier referrals to our certified minority, veteran, and women-owned businesses. So when you think about Office of Supply Diversity, we all know that things are challenging, times are challenging, as well as doing business is a challenge. I'm not sure if you know it or not, but small businesses make up the majority of employment. Small business, you business owners, you are our backbone to this economy and to the state, the overall state. So if you're certified, in the chat, if you can put "I'm certified" in the name of your business in the chat. And if you're not, I want you to put "I'm not certified" and then put the name of your business, because we want to get you certified today if you're not certified, because that's one of the beginning steps when you're getting ready to contract with the state of Florida. Next slide, please. A lot of people say, what's the benefits? What are the benefits? I'm certified. What are the benefits? Remember, a tool can only be used if you use it. You know, if you get certification and you don't become active, you don't get involved, you don't attend the events, you don't take a look at the information, that tool becomes useless. So some of the benefits are you get first tier referrals, not just only with the state. We form partnerships throughout the state with cities, counties, universities, and they share their solicitations with us as well, and we share it to our certified business owners. I see a lot of people certified. Awesome. Awesome. BNA, we need to get you certified. Definitely need to get you certified. I see a lot of not certified. So we need to get some businesses certified, because you will get notification for events like this and other events across the state. Also, you'll get your business placed in our online directory. Now, think about this. If you wanted to find a woman-owned, veteran-owned business in Orlando that did architectural design, how in the world would you find that? Well, I can tell you exactly how you can find that. You can find it on our online directory through our search. And this not only allows the state of Florida, but around the nation. We have businesses that are in New York. We have businesses in California. They're interested in contracting with the state of Florida, and they look for these small business owners that are locally. So these are great opportunities, great exposure to your business. Also, as I mentioned before, you get targeted communication. What are some of the targets? What did that look like? So if you are a painter and there's a project at maybe a city or county, and they need some painting services, or they may need some IT services. What they do, they share that solicitation with us. And then we take a look and we assign what we call commodity codes. And you're going to hear a little bit more about commodity codes. They're almost similar to NAICS codes. But those commodity codes, they identify the service that you provide. And also in procurement, every procurement, there's a commodity code that's attached to it. So that's a communication device where we can find and we can see specifically those businesses that we're targeting. Next thing, guidance. Myself and along with our team, we try to assist. And if we don't have all the answers in government contractor, we try to go and look for those resources. So you have someone from an inside perspective from the state where you can reach out to. And if you have questions, we can help and assist to the best of our ability. Although we can't help with actual procurement, because by the time the bid or solicitation is out, it's too late for us to engage. But we have our partners PTAC right here that can definitely assist in that process. Next slide, please. So let's talk about procurement. Since we're talking about procurement, is the process in which if we want an item or a service, we actively procure that. We actually go out and buy it. It's almost like if you're thinking about going and buying groceries, you plan, you organize it, you build your list, and then you go out and you procure it. Some of these terms, this is widely across procurement, period, whether you're in the state of Florida, Missouri, wherever you are. These contracting terms or procurement terms are our lingo, it's our language. So let's talk about ITB, invitation to bid. Have you ever seen a solicitation? You like, okay, it's an invitation to bid. Whenever you see that, typically we know exactly what we want. We know the price, the color, we know everything. So we're focused on primarily that widget. We're not looking for anything else outside of that. We're looking for something specific. So whenever you see ITB, you know that it's based on price and best value. Request for proposal. Request for proposal, that's a situation where we are going out and we're looking for solutions, deliverables, timeliness, and we're looking for those best price, of course. Invitation to negotiate, that's kind of like if I'm trying to drive to Miami and I'm looking for the best route, the quickest, safest route to Miami, then you would basically have an ITN. It means we know what we want, we're just not sure how to get there. For you as a vendor, that means bring your A game, give us some ideas. We're looking for some direction on how do we procure this. So whenever you see these key titles on the solicitations, they kind of give you a little insight on how to address and how to approach that solicitation. Now, eQuote, we utilize My Florida Marketplace. So eQuotes are typically under $35,000 or less. eQuote is, we have a quote, and then anytime it's 35,000 or less for the state of Florida, we only need 2 to 3 quotes. So that's a key where we may send it out to 10 to 20, but it's an online system. You'll get a notification. So make sure when you register that you get a good email and a solid email that multiple people in your business can have access to, so you won't miss any of those opportunities. Next slide, please. Okay, general procurement process. So we utilize a system what we call VBS, which is vendor bid system. Government is notorious for creating acronyms, and we're no different. So whenever you sign up or you register in My Florida Marketplace, any bid that's over $35,000 or more, it will be located on our VBS. The VBS is a public procurement. Everyone gets to see it. It's anything that's over 35,000, we have to publicly procure it for the state of Florida. So what do you have? So if you have a solicitation and the commodity code matches your commodity code, you would get a email notification that this bid is here. But I also encourage you to take a look at VBS at least weekly to see if there's a solicitation that you may can provide those services, but you didn't have the matching commodity code. Then I would add that commodity code to my profile. Let's have a conversation about commodity codes. I know I kind of been talking a little bit about commodity codes, but they are so crucial. Commodity codes are the link between you and that solicitation. If you don't have the right commodity codes, then you may not get the notification for that solicitation. And all solicitations will have a beginning date and an end date. It's key that you read every single solicitation. Never think that, oh, I saw this last year, it's going to be the same thing. Some solicitations will also have events inside of that solicitation. It could involve site visits. It could involve you supplying some information in between the beginning and the end date. So it's critical that you read every solicitation thoroughly. Another thing, most solicitation will have a question and answer period. So don't be alarmed. Just know that if you have some questions, they will typically have a scheduled listing of events. If you ever need to have any questions, and this is just procurement 101, if you ever have any questions about a particular procurement, only contact that procurement officer that is listed on that solicitation, because we try to be fair, transparent, and it's only one line of communication. Next slide, please. Now here, anytime the state buys a lot of items, for instance, paper, it could be anything that is large and utilized throughout the whole state, there's typically is going to be a contract for it. And these are what we call our state term contracts. Now there are three different contracts. So we have the alternate contract source and we have a state term contract. We'll start off with those. The state term contract, those are contracts that almost every single state agency has to utilize if they're buying those products or services that are on that contract. They can't go outside of there without a justification. And that's a lot of paperwork. But an alternate contract source, we like to call those piggyback contracts. Alternate contract source, imagine the state of Texas may have a contract and we utilize some of those same services and we would like to participate on that contract. Then we will formalize, we'll reach out to that vendor as well as that state and we'll get approval, and that will become what we call an ACS, an alternate contract source. So those, what does that mean to a vendor? If I don't have opportunities and I'm on the state contract and I provide those same services, what do I do as a vendor? All of our contracts, they have the point of contact. You can look it up. You can look up the vendor point of contact. So you as a vendor, we would recommend that you reach out for some subcontracting opportunities with that primary vendor. If it's the alternate contract source, rest assured that you possibly could just go directly to that entity and contract directly with them because it's an alternate. They're not required to utilize that. Now, some alternate contract sources are agency specific contracts and they do have to utilize those contracts. But sometimes, and most of the time, the alternate contract source, you as a vendor has an opportunity to actually sell your goods and services directly to the state. Next slide, please. Once again, My Florida Marketplace, that is our central hub. That's our online procurement system. That's open 24/7. And you can take a look at those bids at any time. Now, whenever you're actually signing up and you're registering, you're gonna submit your username, your password. It's key that you document that and try to keep it somewhere where the office or your administrative can see it, because this is critical. Anytime you need to update any of your information or anything like that, it's important. Now, we do have a reset as well. Also, here is where you can provide your general business information. This you will complete a profile so we can see your business online, not only us, but as well as other entities as well. The contact information is key. Make sure that your contact information is up to date. And here we have a new enhancement where you can actually register to become a certified business online instead of mailing in your documents, instead of faxing in your documents. Now, right there, when you register as a vendor, you actually can become certified right there from the convenience of your office or even at your own home. Then you can make those enterprise selection, your business location, and once again, that key thing, commodity codes. Commodity codes is the key. Then you can also select what type of solicitations you would like to engage in. So this is the centralized hub and it's key to doing business. Now, do you have to be certified to actually do business with the state? No, but you do have to be registered with My Florida Marketplace. Next slide. Now, if you have any questions in the process, whether you're trying to get certified or whether you're registering your business, here's the contact information for our My Florida Marketplace. This is the resource that you would want to utilize whenever you want to reach out or you had any questions. Slide, please. Once again, so why in the world would you want to certify? First tier referrals. Whenever our state agencies or other entities outside of the state are looking for certified businesses, we are the first line of referrals. You also get your business listed in our directory, which is open to the complete World Wide Web. Then you also get private sector referrals as well. So some large businesses, like we have construction projects, we have other projects where private sector businesses utilize our directory as well. You get targeted communication. You find about valuable events like this. We have OSD events throughout the state. We also participate with other events. You get all of this information that's sent, that's organized and sent directly to you, including solicitations as well as trainings as well. Next slide, please. So the certification process, this is pretty much standard throughout the process. Who do we certify? We certify women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, as well as minority-owned businesses. First step, of course, you have to be registered in My Florida Marketplace. And these are some of the requirements. 51% owned and managed by either a woman, a veteran, or minority, a permanent resident of the state of Florida, a net worth less than $5 million, fewer than 200 employees. A business must be domiciled, and that's the key. Your business must be domiciled in the state of Florida. Now, can you have other offices throughout the nation? Yes, you can, but your main state of business must be domiciled in the state of Florida. Then a U.S. citizen or permanent resident as well. Next slide, please. It's pretty easy to get started. Once again, once you register in My Florida Marketplace, you can go online and you can upload all of your documents, your supporting documents, and then we will begin that process of reviewing. Next step. So through the My Florida Marketplace, of course, we kind of went over this a little bit. It's going to ask you for your designation on which one would you like to become certified. Then you make that selection. And there are business owners that are a combination of all. We do have certified business owners that are women-owned, as well as veteran-owned, as well as minority. So, or it could be a combination of either of those three. Next slide, please. These are some of the documents. So for our veterans, we make it very simplistic, very easy, turnkey for the veterans. Only thing that we require for our veterans is a veteran application, which you can download online on our website, or you have a document that you determine where you're service disabled as well. Next slide. So as we take a look at the certification process, how does it work? When you register, that's the step. Then it only takes about 15 working days or less normally. Sometimes, especially during storms and different challenges, sometimes that process may be a little bit long, but the average is generally 15 working days or less. And then you would get an online certificate that you're certified. And once you're certified, it lasts for 2 years. And then there's a simple process, which is the next slide we'll cover. So the recertification process, it'll give you a notification. You'll receive an automatic notification. And the only thing that we require, and it's all online, is no more documents unless you had some change in your business structure. Then we will require some more documents. But all all the form will be is the federal ID and tax number, your gross revenue from last fiscal year, your gross revenue from state term contracts, your net worth of your company, the number of employees, the owner / co-owner names and responsibilities. And if your business requires a license, a professional license, then we will also ask for you to submit that documentation as well. And it's just that easy. But now, if anything structurally change, it will raise a flag, and then you would need to contact our office so that we can go through that recertification process. Next step. So let's talk about some resources. These are some good resources for you as a vendor if you're looking at contracting. Have you ever wondered what did the state, you knew the state bought or procured a certain item or from a certain vendor, and you want to know, what did they pay? How much was that PO? This Florida Accountability Contract Tracking System, or what we affectionately call FACTS, once again an acronym, that is a place you can do market research. It allows you to search by state agency. It allows you to search by commodity class or group. It allows you to search by your vendor. If you know a competitor, you know an actual competitor, you can key in that competitor's name, and it'll give you a listing of all the transactions that the state has procured with that vendor. And guess what it also do? Give you PO numbers, as well as descriptions, as well as the pricing. And it also gives you the dates in which those procurements took place. That's valuable information whenever you're trying to see, okay, I have a service, can I be competitive with the state of Florida? You can do a lot of good research in that way. So that's a good tool, as well as often check the vendor bid system. The vendor bid system, once again, every state agency utilize it, and other entities as well. Any bid that's over $35,000 or more, it will be on that vendor bid system. And then don't forget to visit our OSD page, because we share solicitations outside of the state. So if the town or the city of Orlando or Titusville or wherever in the state, if they had a procurement that they want to share out to our certified businesses, we post those bids as well. And if you, for some reason, may not fit into the category of becoming certified, you can still utilize that same page and these same resources. So these are valuable resources. Next slide, please. Another valuable tool that I like to share is, say you want to find out who is the procurement officer for Department of Health. You can go to this website right here, to our DMS website. You can click on the home page, and underneath the logo, you'll see business operations. And then you would click on, it'll be a pull down menu, and then you would click on state purchasing and look down to the bottom right hand side of that screen. You can click on the state agency purchasing contacts. And when you click on that, you'll see a listing of all the state agencies, and you'll see a listing of all the procurement personnel for each and every state agency. So I think this is a valuable resource, especially when you're trying to begin contracting with the state as well. Next slide. And we also have a vendor page that's dedicated just for our vendors. If you want to know about contracting, they also have YouTube videos, they have tutorials, they have a lot of helpful hints and a lot of helpful tips. This is another great resources for our vendors if you want to just learn a little bit more about contracting with the state. Next slide. Well, that's my information. I'm Robert Major. I'm the Executive Director for the Office of Supplier Diversity. I would recommend, if you want to reach out, please reach out. I would recommend that you utilize my email. That's the best way to catch me, because sometimes I'm involved with meetings and different things like that as far as the phone. But the email is the best way to catch me. But here's our contact information. Also, here's the website. A lot of people have been asking about the website. There's the website, dms.myflorida.com/OSD. And if you want to reach out to our office, OSD info, at dms.myflorida.com. I encourage you and thank you so much, Don, and thank you so much, PTAC. Thank you so much, FEMA. Thank you for the state of Florida, everything that you all continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Major. That was just a wonderful presentation. A lot of great information. That brings me to my portion of today's presentation, and that is talking a little bit about disaster recovery contracting and the Florida PTAC. You'll notice in my presentation that I'm going to touch on a lot of the same subjects that you've already heard about. However, I'm going to go just a little bit deeper into some of those areas. What I'd like to do is, as you can imagine, we've gotten a lot of inquiries, emails, phone calls from throughout the state of Florida and throughout the country. How can we help? What can we do? And so over the last 10 days or so, 12 days, what we've done here is gather our top 5 frequently asked questions. Now, I will say a couple things. One, today's seminar and my presentation, we can't possibly give you everything that you would need to know to do government contracting. This is a good start to it, but the topic of government contracting, and especially in a disaster recovery rebuilding effort, it's complex. So what we provide at the Florida PTAC is one-on-one consulting services. This is meant as an introduction to that first meeting that you should schedule with your Procurement Technical Assistance Center. It is not meant as a substitute. It's meant to help you have a very, very productive first meeting and ultimately, succeed here. So let's take the first question that we've been receiving here recently, and that is, how can we support FEMA? All right, great question. One of the first things that we ask and like to take a look at with you is, well, maybe FEMA is not the agency that is buying what you can provide. So one of the key concepts with anything related to government contracting, especially in this environment, is that there are many agencies and organizations involved. This is a multifaceted, complex response. FEMA may not be the agency that's buying what you provide. It's also important to recognize that many agencies and organizations will have duplicative efforts, okay? And that's by design, because a single agency or a single organization providing supplies or services may not be enough. And so there needs to be that overlap, and there needs to be that redundancy. But for example, the Army Corps of Engineers provides debris, power, facilities, temporary roofing, emergency response operations. And you received a list earlier of what FEMA purchases: medical supplies, meals, water, blankets, tarps, transportation, security, those sort of things. But also you'll see that a lot of city and county government agencies will buy very, very similar products and services as well. And hence, that's why we have representatives not only from the federal government providing you information here today, but we also have the state agencies represented here today. And so it's important to understand that the overall approach to this is to drive operations response efforts down to the lowest practical level. And so oftentimes that comes down to city and municipalities. The point of this is that you may not be doing direct support with FEMA. And so again, coming back to what the PTACs do is we help you to identify where to look. And more importantly, we teach you how to understand the various resources and tools and things that are available to you out there so that you can do your own homework in finding customers who are in need of what you offer. Okay, what's also important here, and I know this has been mentioned previously a number of times, and that is the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief Act. Now, what's important about this, and the takeaway to this that I really want to underscore, is that there's a preference that is given to local firms. So again, we have many people here today attending this webinar, and every business is different. You all offer different services, different products. Some of you may be based in Florida. Some of you may be based in areas that were hit hard by Hurricane Ian, and some of you may be from out of state. It's just important to recognize that this is a big priority for relief efforts, is to try to receive as much support as possible from local entities and resources. Okay, one of the other questions that we frequently get is, who should we call? And what's important, there's a few ideas behind this, and kind of going off of the previous topic, oftentimes there isn't a single person or a single point of contact. And again, that's by design. A single point of contact is a potential single point of failure. So many times there's not one individual, there are a multitude of individuals. Now, it's very difficult to reach people at this point in time. Everybody's responding as best they can. As was stated earlier, oftentimes the best way to reach people is through email. And what I want to talk about very, very briefly in contacting people, reaching out to them, offering your assistance, is not to forget marketing, not to forget that it is important how you portray your organization, your professionalism, and then also conveying what your capabilities are, what services or products that you offer. So in sending that email, some of the basic information of your contact information, your phone number, your email, how to reach you, a link to your LinkedIn page is very, very helpful. And any other information such as your NAICS codes, your business codes, and so on. Information on your website is also important. Oftentimes, people who, decision makers, people who have the authority to make purchases and engage your services, they will go to your website. So having a link to your website on your email, and then having a section on your website that speaks to how you can provide support in a disaster recovery and relief operation. There's also something called a capability statement. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Connections are important. Networking, letting people know what you do, what you can offer, making those good first impressions. And then vendor registrations are also important. I'm going to hit that here in a second. So I'm going to come back and hit capability statements and vendor registrations here. And again, this is not meant to give you everything, but it's meant to give you some good information, some good topics of conversation in your first meeting with your PTAC specialist, right? Okay, so let me talk about capability statement. This is a little different. A lot of the things with marketing in government contracting are very similar to business type of marketing. However, in government contracting, oftentimes you'll hear the term capability statement. Send me your capability statement. That's often the first request that any agency or prime contractor will make of you. So what is it? It's basically a 1 or 2 page short resume of your company. What you do, what your resources are, where you've done it before. You want to also include things like your NAICS codes or your UN SPSC codes, your business codes, right? Your credentials, any certifications that you may have. And also don't forget your contact information, very, very important. And the reason that I underscore that is that we receive a lot of inquiries from businesses that want to help, and there's not a phone number, there's not an address, there's not a website. It's just an inquiry that drops in, and the only response element that we have is an email. So who knows where your email may get passed on to, and you want your email to get passed on to somebody else. So the more information that you can provide, it's important, and details are important, and neatness counts, and profession, all those types of things count here. So it's oftentimes is your door opener, and it may get passed on to others. It doesn't mean that it needs to be slick and glossy and you need to spend a lot of money doing it. But it just like a resume, It is a representation of your company and what you can do. And if you're responding in Southwest Florida, bring a whole lot of them with you. Yeah, very, very important capability statement. Okay. Another thing that you've heard mentioned several times here during the course of today's presentations, that's advanced contracts for goods and services. Agencies do not wait for an event to happen and then scramble to onboard contractors. There are pre-existing contracts that are in place, and they call them advanced contracts usually, where in the event of a disaster event like we've experienced, many agencies will have a cadre of contractors sitting and ready to go that they can energize and bring on site to help with recovery operations. And I've listed just a few of them here. FEMA was mentioned earlier, the Army Corps of Engineers. Florida Department of Transportation also has, I think, around 39, 40 or so companies that are available for various functional support areas. Many counties will actually have pre-existing contracts in place, and that's kind of a case-by-case basis. And of course, Department of Homeland Security. Some of the lessons learned that we've seen in supporting businesses, and under arrangement like this, usually it's going to be a subcontracting type of relationship that you have, right? So that the idea is that you're approaching a prime contractor who's holding one of these advanced contracts, and you're coming on board as a subcontractor. Some best practices and lessons learned that we've seen is to make sure that you're working under a signed contract. Remember, it's called government contracting, and you want to have a contract in place and make sure that you read it and understand it. And if you don't, that's where your PTAC specialist can help you. Now, we're not in the legal profession. We don't provide legal assistance or anything like that. However, we have a lot of experience, and we'd be happy to look those over. If you have questions about the content of those contracts, please engage with us. You're going to want to secure work order tickets, right? Make sure that somebody has authorized your company to do the work, to provide the service, to provide the products. If you're providing services, especially, make sure that you take before and after pictures of the work. If you're providing products, right, get a receipt, signed receipt. Collect signed employee timesheets. More than likely, you're going to be required to provide certified payroll. Make sure that you understand what you are obligated to provide to fulfill that government contract or that subcontract. It's a big part of government contracting, is not only doing what you do, right, providing the functional support, providing the product or the service, but it's also making sure that you're compliant and supporting the administrative requirements correctly. Big part of it. And then again, another best practice here is, whenever possible, try to perform the service or the product with local labor, right? Whenever possible. Okay. Another question that we frequently get is, how do we get on the preferred vendor list? Okay, great question. If you've never done this before, you would think there is one. Well, there isn't a preferred vendor list. However, there are numerous registrations and places that you can go to notify agencies and let them know of your interest and what you do, but there is not a preferred vendor list. But there are multiple registrations. Let me hit on just a few of those, okay? So one of the first ones is that, and this was discussed earlier, FEMA has an industry liaison vendor profile that you can complete online. This is not a guarantee of work. This is simply a sharing of information, and the folks at FEMA do the best that they can do to share that information with other agencies and to utilize, turn to this as a market research tool when they're considering buying So very, very important to complete this. One of the questions that you will encounter in this form is, do you have a SAM registration? If you don't have a SAM registration, don't complete this form, go and do your SAM registration, then come back and complete it. One of the other elements of this is the request for a NAICS code, and I'm going to hit that in a little bit more detail just in a couple minutes, but very, very important. Now, both of these things, your PTAC specialist can help you with, and I am one of many. We have numerous PTAC specialists here in the state of Florida, but across the country as well. So another registration that you're going to need to complete, as I mentioned on the FEMA profile form, it's requesting that you do your SAM registration. Well, this is the site where you want to do that. Now, one of the things that I would caution you on is make sure that you are at the sam.gov site. There are some organizations out there that you think that you're at a government site. It's red, white, and blue. They have an American flag flying, but it may not be a government site. So make sure that you do a hand entry into the address bar at the top of your browser, or just be very, very careful to check that it is a sam.gov and you get the official website of the United States government. Now, having said that, SAM registrations, there's no cost to it. Okay. However, if you've never done this before, if you're unfamiliar with it, it can be a little bit overwhelming at first. And again, that's where your PTAC specialist can help you. That's a large part of what we do and how we help businesses. And you probably have picked up on it by now, but I think probably the punctuation mark after all of my statements is go and meet with your PTAC. And again, we can't give, as much as we would like to give you every possible answer in the course of a short presentation, it is just too deep, too complex, and there's too many variables. However, I just want to give you a few tidbits, again, to prepare you for that first meeting with your PTAC. On the SAM site, you'll see that there is a option, I have it circled here, for entity information. Now, when they say entity, that means you. That means your business, okay? And this is where you can, when you're completing your SAM registration, what you want to do is select that, yes, I am interested and I can respond to disaster requirements. What you will notice in that area, what I would encourage you to do is go in there and play around with it. Take a look at doing searches for different organizations. And one of the ways that you're going to do a search is based off of your NAICS code or the functional area, okay, of the contract. And look for businesses that are providing what you can offer. Now, there's about 150,000 companies that are registered just to provide disaster response services and products. So good idea to sort of get an idea of what is the government's experience, because this is how many times they will identify vendors, right? When you're in the middle of your SAM registration, right? So now where I'm at on this screen is I'm actually into a registration, right? So there's a whole series of screens that you go through in order to complete that registration. Registrations usually take anywhere from an hour to, as much as 2 hours to complete, depending on the complexity of your business. During that registration process, you will arrive at this screen. What's important, if you want to support these kind of operations, is that you select yes. And then, of course, what states that you can support disaster response and recovery operations. And of course, if there's any bonding or construction bonding that's involved in typical operations that you support, okay? Another area that's important, and this has been hit on a few times earlier, but this is kind of down in the SAM registration, as you're marching through that, down towards the end. So if you can imagine, you're kind of about at the end of your registration, right? You've been working on this for about an hour and a half or so, hopefully with your PTAC specialist. And you're just about at the end of it, and you can see that submit registration button come up, and you want to click on that and submit it. Don't do it. What we advise that you do is just before that final screen, there's a screen that presents itself offering to register or update your SBA profile. This leads to a separate database that's called, oftentimes the acronym is referred to as the DSBS, and that is the Dynamic Small Business Search. That is also another database that is utilized both by government agencies and prime contractors who are looking for subs to find companies, especially small businesses, because it's the Dynamic Small Business Search, who can provide the services and products that they're looking for. And again, this kind of goes back to marketing, your capability statement. This all kind of sort of dovetails together, is that, you know, neatness counts, and completing these things to the fullest possible degree is important. So the description of your company, your keywords, key phrases, the things that you can do are going to help agencies find you. It's also going to be a representation of your business. So it's important that you take your time here and you do it right. Another area that has been discussed earlier is My Florida Marketplace, the vendor information portal. Okay. If you're going to support a Florida agency, and again, a lot of the spend, a lot of the activities are pushed down to municipalities, counties, and agencies. And so you're going to want to register here. Now, what's important here again are codes, getting the right codes in there. And the way that My Florida Marketplace works is you can opt in to have opportunities pushed to you. So if you aren't selecting the right codes, then you may not be seeing opportunities arriving in your inbox. Okay. All right. So I've been talking a lot about codes. Let me dedicate just a couple minutes to that. So knowing your codes is very, very important. The first one is what's called a cage code. Now, this is assigned to you when you complete your SAM registration, but it is a way of identifying your business. Okay, very important. You want to include that in your capability statement and other information about your company. It's a way that the government agencies can find you and locate you. All right, so let me hit a little bit on the codes here for a second. There are NAICS codes, right? You saw those on a few screens. Now, before I do that, let me hit on all the basic coding idea here. The idea of codes is that, what do you call waste removal, right? There's a number of different words that could be assigned to that way of describing that, right? It could be called debris removal, trash collection, waste collection, cleanup services, on and on and on. So it's very inefficient for the government to advertise opportunities or to classify those opportunities using every possible synonym that's associated with activity. The way that the government does this, and they track their spending and that they organize what's going on, is through the assignment of codes. Okay. Now at the federal level, it's NAICS codes or product and service codes. Those are the two primary ways that federal agencies will identify what they're looking for. So again, going back way to the beginning of my presentation where I said, hey, it might not be FEMA. You might be doing work for other agencies. If you're doing work for a federal agency and you're registering in SAM, then you're going to want to look at your NAICS codes and possibly your product service codes as well. If you're doing work at a state level, you should still know your NAICS codes. You should still know those. But at the state of Florida, we use something called UNSPSC codes. And it's the same theory, it's the same rationale as NAICS codes. It just happens to be a different type of coding system that's used by the state of Florida. And in My Florida Marketplace, when you do that vendor information portal registration for your organization, that's what you're going to enter. Okay. Another coding system that you may encounter, generally this is kind of down at the city level, sometimes at the counties, they may use something called NIGP codes. Same idea, just a different type of coding system. the takeaway from this is you have to know what your codes are to help you connect and to help agencies connect with what you're offering. Now, even drilling deeper, there may even be keywords and key phrases. So it's going to depend again on the agency. It's going to depend on you, what you're offering. And again, to put my punctuation mark at the end of a slide, your PTAC specialist can help you decipher all the coding. Okay, so the other question we get is, how can we help? What can we do, right? Well, obviously providing contracting support, but also if you're interested, donating to a relief organization or even joining the disaster relief workforce. But preparation is key to however you're going to be supporting these recovery efforts. Here are a few tips that we have come to realize in helping clients. One of the big ones, the middle one, you can read the others for yourself, but make sure that you communicate with your bank or your accountant, your insurance agent, have good access to an attorney and legal advisement. So very, very important. Another key takeaway to this slide is that this is not a sprint. This is a recovery operation that is going to take a long, long, long time. Looking at Hurricane Michael, which was a Category 5 hurricane, hit about 4 years ago. There are still procurement opportunities going on at the county level that are specific to recovery and rebuilding efforts for Michael. So this is not something that is just going to be here now while it happens to be in the news cycle. This is going to be something that's going to be ongoing and ongoing. So the point of that is, take your time, prepare yourself correctly. Enough people have been hurt and devastated by this disaster event. Okay. The last thing we want is for you as a business to be adversely affected by this. Okay. So we want to bring the best possible services, the best possible products to our agencies and help Floridians recover, but we don't want to see anybody get hurt in the process of doing that. Okay. So take your time and do it right. It's going to be there for a while. So the other question that we get is, this is very complex. Who can help? Well, hopefully you've realized that your PTACs are a tremendous resource to you. Our services are available to you at no cost. There are many of us across the country. These are the three basic things that we provide: education and training, such as the seminar that you're participating in today, information resources and research services, but where we really, really can do you a lot of good is through one-on-one consulting services. And that's where you sit down one-on-one with a PTAC specialist and discuss specifically the needs of your business. Okay, what do? We basically do everything from beginning to end of government contracting, from helping you start with the registration requirements all the way through to being awarded the contract and post-award functions and everything in between. I will emphasize that what we are is a support organization. We are here in the state of Florida. We are based out of universities. That is a good description of what we do. Being based out of universities, we teach you how to do things for yourself. We don't perform the functions for you. However, we are right along with you, a guide on the side, if you will, to teach you how to do things for yourself. So we will help you navigate the maze of government contracting. Here in Florida, you can see we are stationed around the state. We have one of the best teams in the country here in Florida. We're assigned to help Florida-based businesses. Okay, if your business is located in another area of the country, you have access to the same expertise, information, and resources as we do here. Okay, just because we happen to be located in the state that has experienced this event, that doesn't mean that we have any additional inside information or special information that is not available to the other PTACs around the country. So If you're not in Florida, reach out to your local PTAC. If you are in Florida, reach out to us. You'll need to complete a request for consulting registration. This is a one-time registration, but it is required in order for us to support you and engage in any consulting efforts. We do provide statewide coverage across the state. So if you're outside the state of Florida, go to our National Association of Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. You can see the website here on the screen. And again, work with your local PTAC. This is not a one and done type of relationship. This is something that hopefully to your benefit is an ongoing discussion and ongoing engagement with your PTAC. This is not something that you're just going to get in one meeting. If you are in the state of Florida, here is our website. I mentioned earlier that you have to do a request for consulting or complete a form. If you see the big red button there on the left-hand side of our website, click Request for Services, and then click on the city that's nearest to where you are located at. Okay, just a couple other things here. I'm going to wrap up. Here in Florida, we are also part of the SBDC network. We work hand in glove with our SBDC partners, and there's about 250 business consultants across the state of Florida. If government contracting isn't what you're interested in and you're looking at other business support resources, take a look at the SBDC. I specifically operate out of the University of West Florida. However, we're located, as I said, around the state. Many resources, information, workshops, and so on. I'd also like to thank Terry for all his support. He is with the SBDC. He is my partner in this endeavor, and without him, this event would not have been possible. So thank you, Terry. We appreciate everything that you've done, and I sent you a few emails late yesterday on a Sunday, and you responded very quickly. So thanks for your efforts, and we appreciate it. So, again, thank you to our panelists, the organizations that supported this event, the University of West Florida, our SBDC partners here, FEMA, Florida Office of Supplier Diversity, everybody that pulled this together. I can say that these agencies were reaching out to us as the hurricane was passing by my window and saying, we need to get a seminar online as quickly as possible. And so very much on top of it as far as this goes, and very appreciated. Again, I wanted to thank all of you who attended today for your interest in supporting recovery operations, not only for this event, but for any future events that our country may experience. Without you, without your support, without American businesses here, small businesses, we can't recover from this. You are integral to the recovery operations here for this event, and also for all things government contracting. So your interest in this and your support of this is very appreciated. We hope that you continue on your journey forward, and hopefully see you in the near future. Please reach out to us. Reach out to your local PTAC. And again, if that is not here in Florida, reach out to your local organization. They have exactly the same resources, information, and expertise as we can offer here in Florida. And more importantly, they can establish a long-term support relationship, business relationship with you. I would encourage you to please go to our Florida PTAC LinkedIn page, okay? And we are posting updates and information as it becomes available to us. We post all that again on our Florida PTAC LinkedIn page, and subscribe to that or monitor it for updates. And that is our primary method of getting information out to everybody as quickly as we can. Also, feel free to subscribe to our newsletter. and information as well. That is a good avenue of information as well. Okay, with that, I think I will wrap it up.